Alrighty, we are live. That's good. So, eat KFD Dickman. Cutman. All right. Okay. Oh, we got to share it with Twitter. All right. Welcome. Gonna start in a few moments. Episode 10. Can't believe we're already up to 10 episodes for the podcast. Give it a few more seconds and we'll start. And I'll give it a bit more. Give some time. People will try to come in. Welcome. Start in a few seconds or a few moments. Very soon we'll start. Sooner we can start better because we got a lot to go over tonight. No, tonight not. Usually be earlier, but tonight I had changed last second. I'll get into that. Then start. Three more seconds and we will start. Thank you for liking the stream. 10 seconds and we will start. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back for episode 10 of the Benny in the Booth podcast. We've got a lot to unfold this week between conference championship games. Who won and kept their playoff chances alive and made it in the end? Who didn't? NFL week that someone went crazy, somebody can literally explain in a few words. And MLB news regarding current status for next year and Hall of Fame results through the non-valued ballots. All that coming up. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to what is crazy to be saying, episode 10 of the Benny in the Booth podcast. Thank you for all the support to this point. Since the last live stream, we officially did hit 50 subscribers before the end of my birthday, which I do appreciate that. Very well appreciated. I'm going to set a goal. If we could get in the range between 75 and 100 by January 1st, 2022, at some point after New Year's, I will do a Q&A involving chat, comments, any way you could communicate with me. I'll be taking questions. I'll put it into list and turn into a video where I will answer questions. Maybe there's something that you don't know about me that you can learn just from the Q&A. But we gotta get to in between 75 and 100 by New Year's, which I think is realistic. We'll see what happens. Just to note why this is later than usual. I usually do the podcast at home on Tuesdays, and when I went home today, I brought my laptop charger. I brought my phone charger. I have the mic at home, but I forgot my laptop itself, which has all my notes for each episode, including today's episode, and it had already been set up to go live. And at that point, I was just like, you know what, I'll just do this later tonight. So that's how we ended up doing it now. Let's get into it. Conference championship week in college football. One of the biggest weeks in college football. Well, basically one of the biggest weeks of college football regular season. This is where the regular season wraps up and sets up for who's going to be in the playoffs and who is not. Let's get into it. Obviously, I'm only going to cover the conference championship games I made predictions for, which I actually went meh this week. Nothing crazy. Let's get into it. Oregon at Utah, revenge for the regular season matchup. It was basically what happened in the regular season, except Oregon made it a bit more painless. But Utah once again whooped 38-10. It was all Utah in this game, as Utah wins the Pac-12. And that's a big note, as you'll see later with one of the bowl games. Next up, Georgia, Alabama. I thought Georgia was going to win this game, and it turns out they were a bunch of frauds. Best defense in the country. How about 33 points scored on them by Alabama's offense? Now, Alabama ended up with 41, but one of those touchdowns was a pick six on Georgia's not as good offense, as Alabama blew the river off Georgia's defense and Georgia itself, 41-24. But the main part I want to highlight from this game is in the fourth quarter with like 7 minutes left. Georgia, I think, had the ball, but Georgia had the ball. I think it was still their own territory, but it's it was right by Bama's territory. Fourth down and 15, and you'd think you gotta go for it with Saban on the other side, with Bama's offense on the other side, especially when you factor in that the head coach of head coach of Georgia, former Saban coach under Saban, and has coached against Saban multiple times throughout his career. Yet he punted. Bama ended up scoring more, and that was the nail in the coffin officially in that end of the game. Kirby smart, more like Kirby stupid. Anyways, Bama whooped 41-24, and boy did that shake up the rankings a bit this week. Next up, the Big Ten championship game between Michigan and Iowa. This wasn't even a contest. Michigan went 3 on their first drive. The nail in the coffin was basically when Iowa took it downfield in the red zone. They tried a trickery play, but the guy they were throwing the ball to kind of tripped up. Had he not tripped up, it's probably an easy touchdown, but he tripped up, and they ended up missing the field goal. And Michigan then went up to go on to put up 42 points on Iowa. Haskins had a 2-touchdown day, but nowhere near what he did against Ohio State, as Michigan absolutely rolled over Iowa 42-3. Iowa did get a field goal in the end, but that's all they got on that game. Michigan winning, and spoiler, ended up still making the college football playoffs, so we'll get into what seed they were in just a moment. Houston, Cincinnati. This was the one group of 5 game that mattered to the playoffs, because if Cincinnati won, they'd get in. It got dicey early. They were down by 14-13, at half. And it was like, is Cincy going to be able to pull this off? They turned the second half into a rout, winning 35-20. And spoiler, they're the first group of 5 team ever to make the college football playoffs. Who they play, we'll get into that in a moment. Next up, another game with a team being proven to be frauds. Absolute frauds. Big 12 championship game between Oklahoma State and Baylor. Oklahoma State, there's two parts of this game that literally just tells you the entire story. 21-13, Oklahoma State's losing to Baylor. They got the red zone, got the ball literally to the Baylor 1-yard line. Shut down in 3 plays, end up getting a field goal. Okay, fine. 21-16, you still have a shot. They get the ball back. Once again, at the 1-yard line of Baylor. 4 plays, 0 points. Baylor won 21-16, showing that Oklahoma State was just frauds. They do get a good bowl game. I think I want to double check this with my notes. They did get a New Year's Six bowl, but it's just rough that they couldn't. They had 2 tries from the 1-yard line to score and only got 3 points. Like, that's rough. And what's funny is actually Ohio State just hired it doesn't have factor to that part of the ball, but Ohio State actually just hired Oklahoma State's defensive coordinator for something on Ohio State's defense. So, funny story. Literally today the news came out. And the last conference championship game I'll talk about, Pitt and Wake Forest. This was back and forth early on, but Pitt eventually routed out and took the win 45-21. And that's the conference games that I'm going to be focusing on. There were others. If you want to know what the scores were, ESPN has scores for all the conference championship games. So you could just go on to ESPN, look under the college football section. But I'm not going through the rest of the pack group of 5 because none of the rest mattered to me anyways. My prediction record ended up 3-3 with conference championships, which honestly I'm satisfied with. Could have been better, could have been worse. And I'll leave it at that. So the final college football playoff rankings. Well, let me start off with this. Nobody dropped out this week. I'm going to start this how they did it on the show, on what was actually a 4-hour segment. They did it like around the 1-hour mark. But they started with 6. They did 6, 5, and then 1 through 4, and then went back down to 25. Number 6, going up from 7, is Ohio State. And number 5, going up from 6, is Notre Dame. I think both move-ups make sense. The seeding makes sense, especially with what's ahead and behind. I don't think there was a mess up there. So, who made the playoffs? Number 1 ended up they started with 4. Number 4 remained Cincinnati. So they are in. Number 3 is what used to be number 1 for every ranking until now, a.k.a. Georgia, falling from 1 to 3. Number 2, Michigan. They stay number 2. They will be playing Georgia. What bowl game I'll be getting to in a moment because I will be going over the bowl game schedules. And number one, if you couldn't tell by who was missing of the conference championship weekend games, is Alabama after romping Georgia. They will be playing Cincinnati. And one of the big questions going into the rankings was, are they going to set up Georgia Alabama rematch right away? Are we going to have it not be in the semis? They ended up not having it in the semis. And per Gary Barta, it wasn't even a factor of having that a rematch right away when they did the rankings. He said afterwards in his press conference, right after they announced who's in the playoffs. So now the rest of the rankings. 25 stayed the same from last week in Texas A&M. San Diego State went down from 19 to 24. Now at 24. Louisiana went up from 24 to 23. Kentucky went up from 23 to 22. Arkansas went up from 22 to 21. Houston went up from 21 to 20, even with the loss. Clemson went up from 20 to 19. North Carolina State stays at 18. Wake Forest went down from 16 to 17 after their loss. Oklahoma went down from 14 to 16. Iowa went down from 13 to 15, not in many spots, after getting rampaged through by Michigan. Oregon went down from 10 to 14 after their loss. BYU went down from 12 to 13. Pitt went up from 15 to 12. Utah went up from 17 to 11. Michigan State went up from 11 to 10. Oklahoma State went down from 5 to 9. Ole Miss stayed at 8. And Baylor went up from 9 to 7. And that is the rankings for this week. The last rankings. So once again, your college football playoff teams for 2022. I mean, technically the semifinals are so 2021, 2022 is Bama, Michigan, Georgia, Cincinnati in that exact order. So now let's get into the bowl games. I'm first going to go over the ones that really matter and the ones I will be giving predictions for. But I will be going through the other ones also. Maybe you see one that you might be interested in going to or watching just in case, I don't know, for some reason. But either way, the college football playoff bowl games are as follows. All New Year's Eve. The Cotton Bowl Classic, which is played at the Cowboys Stadium, is going to be between Alabama and Cincinnati. It is sadly on a Friday, so if you're due, you're not going to be able to really watch it. So to choose the time doesn't matter. But the time for that game will be at 3:30 Eastern time. And that meaning that the Orange Bowl will be Michigan versus Georgia. That game will be at the Dolphin Stadium, being at 7:30 Eastern. The rest of the New Year's 6 bowl games. December 30th, you'll have the Peach Bowl between number 10 Michigan State and number 12 Pitt. That will be at the Falcon Stadium. That game will be at 7 p.m. On New Year's, which is a Shabbos or Saturday night, are the rest of the New Year's 6 bowls. The Fiesta Bowl, which is at the Cardinal Stadium, a 1 o'clock game, will be between number 5 Notre Dame and number 9 Oklahoma. Oh, Oklahoma State. Wait. Oh, Oklahoma State. Oh, no. Yeah, Oklahoma State did get I don't know. I wrote Oklahoma in my notes for some reason, not Oklahoma State. Weird. But they're in the Fiesta Bowl. The Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all. A big matchup on New Year's. Ohio State at 6 against the Pac-12 champion Utah. That'll be a 5 o'clock game, so not really a game that any Jews will be able to watch. But that is at the Rose Bowl Stadium itself, that bowl game. Certain bowl games have their own stadium, like that's literally named after the bowl game. Rose Bowl is one of them since it's been around the longest. I think it's pretty much been always played at that stadium. I think it's been around since the bowl game has been around. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure. And the last New Year's 6 bowl is going to be the Sugar Bowl between 7 Baylor and 8 Ole Miss. And that's going to be at the Saints Stadium, 8:45 p.m. Eastern. So the rest of the bowl games, most of these are not particularly. I'm not going to be doing predictions for them necessarily, but maybe one catches your eye that you want to watch, if maybe an alma mater or something. But I'll just quickly go through them. Bahamas Bowl, which is played at a stadium called Thomas Robinson Stadium in Nassau, Bahamas, is going to be between Middle Tennessee and Toledo. The Cure Bowl, both these are on December 17th. That's when the bowl games officially start. Will be between Coastal Carolina and Northern Illinois at the old Pro Bowl Stadium for the NFL in Orlando, Camping World Stadium. The 18th will have the Boca Raton Bowl, which is at the FAU Stadium in Boca, Florida. Will be between Appalachian State and Western Kentucky. The New Mexico Bowl between Fresno State and UTEP, which is University of Texas El Paso, at the New Mexico Lobo Stadium. The Independence Bowl between BYU and UAB will be at literally its own stadium in Shreveport, Louisiana. The Lending Tree Bowl between Liberty and Eastern Michigan will be at the South Alabama Jaguar Stadium, which is located in Mobile, Alabama. The LA Bowl between Oregon State and Utah State at SoFi, or aka Chargers and Rams Stadium in Inglewood. And then the New Orleans Bowl is the last one on the 18th between Marshall and number 23 Louisiana at the Saints Stadium in New Orleans. Saints Stadium. There's no bowl games on the 19th. I think it pretty much just don't play bowl games on like Sundays. I'm not sure why that is, but they don't play bowl games on Sundays. Not really sure why. Maybe I'll look it up one time and get back to why that is. But anyways, on the 20th is the Myrtle Beach Bowl between Old Dominion and Tulsa. That's at Coastal Carolina, Chanticleer Stadium. The 21st famous Idaho Bowl, Potato Bowl, which is at Boise State Broncos Stadium between Kent State and Wyoming. The Frisco Bowl between University of Texas San Antonio and number 24 San Diego State at Toyota Stadium in Frisco, Texas. The Armed Forces Bowl will be between Army and Missouri at TCU Stadium at Fort Worth, Texas. The Frisco Bowl Football Classic between Miami, Ohio and North Texas will be December 23rd at Toyota Stadium in Frisco. Gasparilla Bowl, which is at the Buccaneers Stadium, will be between Florida and UCF. Also on the 23rd. On the 24th is the Hawaii Bowl between Hawaii and Memphis at Hawaii Stadium in Honolulu, where the Rainbow Warriors play. On the 25th is the Camellia Bowl between Ball State and Georgia State at Crampton Bowl in Montgomery, Alabama. The 27th is the Quick Lane Bowl between Nevada and Western Michigan at the Lions Stadium. So they do get a bowl game, something else positive aside from the Lions. We'll get to their situation from last week in a moment. Military Bowl is also on the 27th between East Carolina and Boston College at Navy Stadium in Annapolis, Maryland. On the 28th, you have the Birmingham Bowl between 20th ranked Houston and Auburn at UAB Stadium in Birmingham. A First Responders Bowl also that day between Air Force and Louisville at SMU Stadium in University Park, Texas. The Liberty Bowl between Texas Tech and Mississippi State at the Memphis Tigers Stadium. The Holiday Bowl between UCLA and number 18th ranked NC State at the Padres Stadium. There are bowl games at baseball stadiums, by the way. The Guaranteed Rate Bowl between West Virginia and Minnesota at the Arizona Diamondback Stadium, Chase Field. That's all on the 28th. For the 29th, you have the Fenway Bowl in its first ever year between Virginia and SMU at, Fenway Park. Don't have to explain where that game really is in Boston. The Pinstripe Bowl this year will be Virginia and Tech and Maryland at Yankee Stadium. It's a Wednesday and a 2:15 game, so not really sure. Unless you don't have work that day for some odd reason, maybe you'd go. But heads up, ain't gonna be much. It's not really two not so good teams necessarily, so not worth going maybe necessarily. Cheez-It Bowl also that day between number 19 Clemson and Iowa State at also the former at Camping World. Alamo Bowl at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio between 16 Oklahoma and 14 Oregon. That's sometimes a interesting bowl game. That's all the 29th. For the 30th, you have the Duke's Mayo Bowl between North Carolina and South Carolina at the Panther Stadium, the Music City Bowl between Purdue and Tennessee at the Titan Stadium, and the Vegas Bowl, Las Vegas Bowl at the Raiders Stadium between Arizona State and Wisconsin. As well as the other games said above that are on New Year's Eve. You also have the Gator Bowl between 17 Wake Forest and 25 Texas A&M at the Jaguar Stadium. The Sun Bowl between Washington State and Miami at University of Texas El Paso Stadium. And the Arizona Bowl between Boise State and Central Michigan at the Arizona Wildcats Stadium in Tucson, Arizona. New Year's, as well as the other games mentioned above, is the Outback Bowl between 21 Arkansas and Penn State at the Buccaneer Stadium, and the Citrus Bowl, which is Kentucky, 22 Kentucky and 15 Iowa at Camping World Ground. And the last other bowl game is the Texas Bowl between Kansas State and LSU, which will be at the Texan Stadium. That's the bowl game list. Obviously, like I said, it will only be doing predictions for the college football playoffs, but maybe some of the others might be interest of you, but that's up to you, really, whether you watch or go. All right. I will be this week is Army Navy. I'm not gonna do prediction because it's like not an easy game to predict. You never know what could happen. But I do hope to try to cover what happens in the game. I won't be able to watch it, but I hope to at least watch the highlights and be covering it next week, especially since there's not going to be any college football to talk about for another week or two. NFL Week 13. Boy, what a week this was. Thursday night football. Cowboys at Saints. Taysom Hill threw 4 picks. Cowboys were all over the Saints. Even though it was close at one point, it was all Cowboys. Cowboys won this one 27-17. Not much more to say on that game. Next up, Giants and Dolphins. Giants had to start Mike Glennon. He flopped. Might have had a concussion. Not much more to say. Dolphins rampage all over the Giants 29. And they will be starting Jake Fromm this week. Who they play will be noted later. Colts and Texans. This was all Colts 31-0. Not much more to say on that game. Vikings at Lions. This game was interesting. The Lions having a pretty good lead at one point, but the Vikings fighting back and took a 27-23 lead. 4 seconds left on right in the red zone of the Vikings. Goff took the snap and threw a game-winning touchdown to give the Lions their first win of the season, 29-27. The game ball dedicated by coach in honor of the high school tragedy that happened recently. I'm forgetting the name of the high school, but honestly, I feel like that was respectable by the Lions coach move. Either way, Lions finally get a win, 29-27. Next up, Eagles at Jets. It was all Minshew mania on the Eagles. Jets put up a bit of a fight, but not really. Eagles won 33-18. Cardinals, Bears. This was all Cardinals with Kyler Murray being back. Bears tried to put up a fight, but put up none. As the Cardinals whooped the Bears 33-22. Chargers at Bengals. This game was interesting and a bit back. And the Chargers took a bit of a lead. Bengals started clawing their way back, but then the Chargers just laid it all out on the Bengals. Burrow did technically get hurt during the game, but didn't matter much as the Chargers whoop the Bengals 41-22. Buccaneers, Falcons. This game was actually a lot closer than the score says, especially at one point, but the Buccaneers eventually just took the lead firmly and never looked back. Sorry about that. Winning 30-17. Rams at Jaguars, all Rams 37-7. Not much more to say about that game. Football team at Raiders. This was back and forth all game long, and the football team getting a last-second field goal to win the game. Not last second, but got a game go-ahead field goal. Raiders can't do anything. Football team wins 17-15. Steelers hosting the Ravens. This was a heck of a game. Lamar Jackson still looking off, but the Steelers took a 20-13 lead, but the Ravens got a last-second touchdown with a few ticks left even afterwards, And you'd think they would just go for the extra point with Justin Tucker being their kicker, but they tried to go for the win. Just out of the hands of Mark Andrews' usually reliable hands. Can't blame him. The ball was a bit beyond him. Steelers barely beat out the Ravens, something I do like to see with them playing the Browns this week, 20-19. San Francisco 49ers at the Seahawks. This was a back and forth game. Seattle ended up pulling out a victory. They just outplayed San Francisco in the end a bit more than a bit. And that's all they need to beat San Francisco, 30-23. Kansas City absolutely rocked the Broncos and might have just sealed their division to them, rocking the Broncos 22-9 on Sunday Night Football. And Monday Night Football between the Patriots and the Bills could be summed up in two stats. Mac Jones for the Patriots threw 3 passes, went 2 for 3 for 19 yards, not a touchdown, not a pick. A had 46 or 48 carries, something like that, for a bunch of yards, and basically their touchdown, as they got a 2-point conversion, 2 field goals. Bills tried to fight back, but couldn't muster up enough in a game that did have a little bit of blizzard before the game that definitely affected it, especially when you look at the kicks before the game. But Patriots beat out the Bills 14-10, and that is a wrap up for week 13. My record and predictions this week went 9-5, pretty good. Overall, I am 71-45-1 for predictions on the podcast. Update to the standings: the Patriots up top at 9-4, followed by the 7-5 Bills, followed by the 6-7 Dolphins, followed by the 3-9 Jets. For the AFC North, the 8-4 Ravens up at top, followed by the 7-5 Bengals, followed by the 6-5-1 Steelers, followed by the 6-6 Cleveland Browns. The AFC South has the Titans up top, followed by the 7-6 Colts, followed by the 2-10 Texans and Jaguars. The AFC West being the Chiefs up top at 8-4, followed by the 7-5 Chargers, followed by the 6-6 Raiders and Broncos. The NFC East, Cowboys up top at 8-4, with the football team at 6-6, followed by the Eagles, who are 6-7, followed by the Giants, who are 4-8. NFC North, the Packers up top at 9-3, followed by the 5-7 Vikings, followed by 4-8 Bears, followed by the finally 1 win, 10 losses, and a tie Lions. NFC South, Buccaneers up top at 9-3, followed by literally everyone else in the division at 5-7, being the Panthers, Falcons, and Saints. And the NFC West, the Cardinals are up top at 10-2, followed by the 8-4 Rams, followed by the 6-6 49ers, and followed by the 4-8 Seattle Seahawks. Week 14 predictions. This is gonna be interesting. I have to pull up something. Hold up. Sorry, I have to pause, but apparently this isn't fully updated version. I don't know. Just give me a second here. But week 14 predictions. Thursday Night Football, Vikings at Steelers. It doesn't just mean for the Vikings and the Steelers. If the Vikings lose and the Packers win this week, the Packers win the NFC North. However, I think the Vikings will win this game. I think this will be a good way for them to rebound after that Lions loss, and I think they do get it done, beating the Steelers. That is my prediction for this week in that game. Ravens at Browns, which I will actually be at this game on Sunday. Lamar Jackson right now is just on a whole downhill. The Browns will be without David Njoku, who's placed on the COVID-19 IR list. But I do think the Browns will be able to get it done because they really need to get this win, or they might be screwed. Not completely necessarily, but they got to win or it will really detriment their playoff chances. For the Jaguars and Titans game, I have the Titans. The Chiefs at Raiders, I have Kansas City. For New Orleans and the Jets, I have the Saints. For Cowboys and football team, I have Dallas. For Carolina, Atlanta, I have Carolina. For Seattle at the Texans, I have Seattle. For Broncos at Lions, I thought about honestly saying the Lions would get a second win here with how downhill the Broncos are, but I don't have the ability to actually say that. So I do have the Broncos. Giants at Chargers, even though I think Fromm could be something, I do think the Chargers will win that game. Bengals at Niners, I have Bengals. Bills at Buccaneers. Not a good matchup for the Bills to try to rebound after their loss to the Patriots. I have Buccaneers. Sunday Night Football, Bears hosting the Packers. Bears at the Packers. Even though if my predictions are correct, the Packers wouldn't win the division this week, I still think the Packers will win. And Rams at the Cardinals. I have the Cardinals. That is my Week 14 predictions. And that's it for the NFL talk for this week. And we'll see what happens with Week 14. I will be at the Browns game, which should be an interesting game, and we'll see what happens with that. MLB, well, I would try to pull up a list of moves, but because MLB is officially in a lockout, they took out the transaction list that I used last time to catch up on transactions. But the latest was the one I said in the last video, Marcus Stroman to the Cubs for 3 years, $71 million. But MLB is officially in a lockout. No free agency, no trades, a lot of no stuff they can't really do during the lockout. This will probably delay the season. To what extent, nobody knows yet. When will they sell the CBA? Who knows? Just hoping at this point it gets settled at some point so we can actually have baseball this year. But there is a bit of baseball news because the early baseball era and the Golden Days era committees have put in people for the Hall of Fame. These ballots these voting systems, just to preface, no one really cares about, but it's covered for me to have for MLB, so I will mention who made it in. From the early baseball era committee, Buck O'Neil, who was a player, manager, and scout for the Negro Leagues, and Bud Fowler, who was a player and manager for a bunch of random baseball leagues. And then from the Golden Days Era Committee, Minnie Minoso, former White Sox, Jim Cott, former Twin, former Yankee, and is a color analyst for MLB Network games that they cover with Bob Costas, Gil Hodges, who was a former Met, and Tony Oliva. That's who they voted in, and that is the MLB news for this week. And that is episode 10. Once again, if we could get the channel by New Year's to between 75 and 100 subscribers, and don't forget, if you do subscribe, to leave the notification bell on so you get notified when I go live, I will do a Q&A by New Year's, January 1st, 2022. I will do a Q&A some point in the beginning of 2022 for the people that watch the podcast. One other note I do want to note, not necessarily good news, but being that someone that's like a family member of mine, cousin of mine, I do want to note this. A cousin who I was with over the weekend is in the hospital, was lightheaded over the weekend and having just some head issues. Things are getting better, but he's still there with like CAT scans and stuff. For Jews, if you're Jewish, the name is Yaakov Noam ben Chavatela. But if he's hearing this, or any one of his family's hearing this, I do want to say Refuah Shalema and hope he gets better, and that hopefully they can get back to home soon. As they're in a hospital in New York, not where they live, as they live in Chicago. That's this week's episode of the podcast. So let's wrap this up. Thank you for coming back for episode 10 of the podcast. And once again, also, thank you for getting the channel officially to 50 plus subscribers. A big accomplishment, one of many I hope to have with this podcast. Next week, we'll have the Army-Navy game to talk about. We'll have NFL Week 14 to talk about, and NFL Week 15 predictions. If somehow something happens with MLB, I'll talk about it. If maybe something happens in NBA between now and then, I'll talk about it. But it's definitely going to be getting shorter in how much I get to talk about, because college football is going to be basically not much for a little bit. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Leave the notification bell on so you're notified when I go live. Leave a like on the stream if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you for episode 11 next week. Bye-bye.